Hi, I'm Suresh Deshmukh, one of the co-organizers of the meetup with Prakash and Humble. Earlier, since pandemic, we went online and we used to do online meetups. And before it was offline, a monthly meetup in various places around Bangalore. But things fell off the wagon and it halted for a while. But anyways, we are back now again, and we'll continue to do the monthly meetup. This time we don't have a theme. Earlier we used to do various themes like various aspects of Kubernetes, monitoring, security, networking, whatever. If people are new to Kubernetes, I would urge you to join the Kubernetes Slack. It's the place where you'll find everyone in the Kubernetes community all over the world, all the contributors, all the users, everyone. Since this is an online platform and like everyone has the ability to speak up and say anything, it doesn't mean you say anything. So maintain decency while commenting and please provide constructive feedback. I'll also post the link to the code of conduct of our meetup. Please try to maintain the decorum of it. I think I'll hand over to Humble now.
Hi everyone, I'm Humble Charamal. Welcome all to our event today. I'm glad to co-host this event with Suraj and Prakash. We were having a small break as Suraj was mentioning, but from here onwards we'll be having regular events coming in upcoming months. And if you would like to present the topic, please feel free to reach out to us. And thanks all for joining today. Today we have great speakers with us, Srikanth, Aman and Mohit, joining us today to present port security policy and VMware Tansu Community Edition. So let's listen to them and learn together. And so let me hand over to Srikanth for the first session on port security policy and gatekeeper and things like that.
Hey, thanks, Humble. Let me share my screen. Let me know if you're able to see the screen.
Yeah, we are able to see.
Okay, great. Thanks. So, pretty excited about today's talk. You will have to bear with me for the next 30 to 35 minutes. I'm Srikanth. I am a platform engineer in a company called IQVIA, and I'm a Kubernetes org member. Most of my contribution is around COPS, so I contribute to COPS, DigitalOcean cloud providers. So the demo that I'll be giving today will be on the COPS Devo cluster. Yeah, so we'll be talking about port security standards. I don't have a big amount of slides here. It's just 2 slides, I would say. So I would be, covering both from the perspective of a cluster administrator and also an application user. I would say more in terms of an application user and less in terms, in terms of cluster admin. But what we'll be covering today, let me hide this. Yeah, so what we'll be covering today, I have the reference spec here. This is a great Kubernetes documentation. So I'll be talking about port security standards. I won't cover pretty much into privileged profile, but we will talk about baseline and restricted profile. So, and most of my talk will be through a demo. So it'll revolve around the famous Nginx part. So I also wish to talk about gatekeeper, but it all depends on the time, and we'll see where we need to hit a hard stop. We will talk about capabilities. The demo revolves around capabilities, but we will see what's all that as part of the demo. So let's head straight to the demo. Yeah, so why this is not okay. So I have this cluster, which is, as I said, it's a single control plane, 3-worker node, definitely not worth for production workload, but okay for this demo. And this is running in Devo, as I said. So we have, if anybody's interested to know more about COPS and DigitalOcean, so this is the link, and it's pretty quite easy and straightforward to set up a COPS based cluster in any of these cloud providers. And I primarily work on supporting Devo. But so yeah, so we have this cluster, and I don't have any namespaces other than the default ones that are coming as part of the cluster. And if I look through the list of pods that are running in this cluster, it's pretty much everything from the kube system namespace. So with that, let me go ahead and create a simple namespace called test1. And I just want to go ahead and deploy this famous Nginx pod. So let me do a kubectl create deployment. I want to call it as test Nginx. And I want to deploy namespace test1, and image is Nginx. All right, so the deployment is created. Let me look through the pods, and the pod is running. So we're all good. The pod is running. Let me exec into the container. Yeah, let me take the container namespace exec into the container, and let me print the user that this container is running. This container is running as root. That's fine. And I also want to see which port Nginx container is listening to. So let me do check for listen. And I know there's some config file in Nginx folder. So you see this default.conf file as part of this Nginx conf.d directory, and it says it's listening on 80. So I should be able to curl on localhost because I'm inside that container, because I'm executing it into the container, and hopefully that should give me a good welcome to Nginx. So this is all fine. It's just that we are basically running this container as root, and it's bound to port 80. But now let's talk about a use case where, say, hey, your organization has this security experts, and they come back to you saying that, hey, you can't basically have this cluster running namespaces with permissive privileges. We need pod hardening to be done, and as a result, we expect to basically use something called as a restricted policy, which has good pod hardening best practices. And at the minimum, we're told that let's start off with restricted and see how it goes. So with that in mind, let's create, we could do that with the same namespace, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new namespace to make it easy. So I have this new namespace, and it's quite easy to create security profile with the restricted or a different kind of profiles. All you need to do is basically add a label, and the same is mentioned over here, how to handle it. So I'm not going to the documentation, right, but I'm just going to go ahead and create a label, and I don't really have to override, but I could override if there are any labels on my namespace test2, and I want to add a label called pod security dot kubernetes.io, and I want to basically enforce, this is a key, and I want to enforce restricted profile on this particular namespace test2. So I'm going to add this label to test2. Let me open the YAML to figure out if this label is applied. Yes, this label is applied. So this is more from the cluster administrator perspective. So he goes ahead and basically adds this label on the namespace. So going forward, anything that's running on this namespace should hopefully have the restricted profile set, and that's what we're going to test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the same deployment test nginx, but rather run it on test2 that we just created on the test2 namespace. Okay, so let me list the pod in test2. I don't see any resources here. Let me do it again. I don't see any something happening. So let me get this deployment here. And the deployment says it's not ready. So something's happening. The pod is not up. Your deployment says not ready. I can do a describe deployment test nginx on this namespace test2. Let me see if I get to know anything here. Scaled up replica, nothing here. It says normal, but you do see replica failure. It says fail create. So for some reason it didn't create. So good way to figure out something gets to this point is look into the events. So I can do a kubectl get events on your namespace, and you can also do a watch on this namespace for an extended period of time, and you do see issues here. So you do see error creating pods, it's forbidden. So it looks like the restricted profile did get applied and says, hey, there's a violation. Allow privilege escalation is set to false. Nginx must set this security context. So let me do a control C, and let's go ahead and try and fix this security context first. So let's go ahead and add this allow privilege escalation. Now we are talking about restricted, and if I go to restricted policy, I do see this privilege escalation should not be allowed, and the allowed values must be set to false. So that's the security context that I would have to apply now. So let me go and kubectl edit deployment. My deployment was called test nginx on test2 namespace. And let me go to security context. Now I do have the security context here. So this security context basically applies to all the containers in this pod. You can also apply security context here. If you do apply here, whatever security context that you apply here will be only applicable for this container. To me, it doesn't matter whether I apply here or here because I only have one container, but let me go ahead and add here. So let me go back, add this allow privilege escalation and set the value to false. Value to false and save it. And then go back to get events and see if it's become any better. Looks like it is a little better because I don't see allow privilege escalation violation anymore, but I do see the other violations, which still makes sense. So it does say you need to drop all capabilities, and as part of the restricted profile, you're not allowed to run container as root. So you need to set run as non-root to true. And it also talks about a seccomp profile must be set to runtime default. Now the seccomp profile is a secure compute profile, which basically restricts some of the system calls that you can make to the kernel, and setting it to runtime default basically uses a default profile that's part of your runtime. In this case, it's the container D runtime. So I still need to go back and update my security context so that I fix all this. So let me edit the deployment again, low privilege, and then add run as non-root. Then I'll set it to true. And capabilities, it does say capabilities. This is for the restricted. Containers must drop all capabilities and are only permitted to add back the netbind service capability. We will talk about netbind service in a bit, but for now, let's drop all capabilities. So I'm going to drop, hold on. Yeah, I'm going to drop all capabilities, and this all is a list. So it must be a list, and it only accepts all in this case. So I'm going to drop all capabilities. Let me save this and see if it did get any better. Looking through the events again, I think it's getting a little better, but it does still now says you're still violating the restricted policy because your seccomp profile is not set. That was expected. So I can edit the deployment again and go to capabilities. Then I need to add this seccomp profile must be explicitly set to one of the values. So for now, I'm going to set only allowed values or runtime default or localhost. I'm going to set this secure computing profile dot type. So type must be set to type default. All right. Hopefully this should do the trick. So let's now do a get pods, and I should see this running. Taking time. Doesn't like. Says create container config error. Something is wrong. So let me, I can describe this pod. It looks like from the security context perspective, I think we did add everything, but something's still not right. So if you look through the events, you do see an error here. So it looks like the kubelet did try to create this container, but because spec was okay, but when it did try to create this container, it did see the image was running as root, because remember we were running Nginx, and as part of the previous test one namespace that we were running, you saw it was running as root, but you can't run as root because you basically have set this run as non-root restricted profile. So I don't have a choice but to go back to this image, and I'm sure most of you here know that you do have Bitnami Nginx image, which does the magic of not running as root. So I'm going to run the same deployment, but run it as a Bitnami Nginx image. And now if I see, I should see this running. Yeah, I think this is good. Let me exec into this container and look through ID, and you'll see here it's not running as root, which is great. Let me also, I know Bitnami Nginx conf file resides in Bitnami of Bitnami Nginx somewhere. So you do see Nginx conf default was 80, but it's been overridden here, and it's running on port 8080, which is great. So I should be able to now curl this on port 8080 and see that it should give back hopefully a good response. And there you go. So now we've done this magic. We started off with a namespace which didn't have, which basically had all the privileges in the world. We ran Nginx as root. We were running on port 80, and we then moved on to, the restricted profile namespace test2, and we got this container running. Great. So this is all fine, but I still haven't really covered much about capabilities here. So I want to highlight this a little more, take up another use case here and walk through. So now let's say you have this your organization. So you've spoken with your security folks, and you've got an approval to basically allow one of your namespace to run as root. Yeah, so you've got that approval in place, and you've been told that, hey, you're okay to basically run your workloads using a baseline profile, what you see here. And baseline profile do allow your workload to run as root. So with that approval in place, let's assume we have, I could do this, I could edit and change this same test2 to use the different profile. But again, to make it easier and simpler, I'm going to create a new namespace, test3. I'm going to change this label to baseline here. Yeah. So I'm going to create, I did create a test3 namespace. I'm adding a baseline profile on this test3 namespace. And now that we have this Nginx container running in test2, let me get that deployment. That was test Nginx. Yeah, test. I'm going to open this YAML file here. So I have this test Nginx. So this is good. I can write this to a file. I'm telling you what I'm trying to do now. So let me try and run the same Nginx in test3 that we created. Yeah, and now that we've got permission to run this as root, I'm going to basically use Nginx because we saw in our previous example you could run Nginx as root. Yeah. So I did that, and because I can run this as root, I don't need to specify run as non-root true, but I'm going to leave this as is. Yeah. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to try and apply this spec on the test3 namespace. I'm going a little fast, but I'm still trying to cover this in the next 10 minutes, so you'll have to bear with me on that. So we have this namespace we have deployed, same test Nginx. So let me look through. The pods here and see if it's all okay. It's not. There seems to be an issue here, but you're getting an error. There are multiple restarts. So it's crash loop back off. So this shows that, okay, the container did start, but something is really wrong with your container, and it's and the pod is killed. And these restarts, you see there's 2 restarts. It does attempt multiple times before giving up, but you could, when your container is in the state, you could look through your logs and see if you get some idea what's going on. So let me look through the logs, and I do see something happening here. I do see it says ready startup, but there's some emergency error log which says chown. You remember you're running this Nginx as a root user, but it's failing, saying that, hey, I cannot chown this particular directory. I can't change ownership of this directory to this particular user 101, says operation not permitted. So something is happening. Remember, you're running as root, but also remember, as part of your deployment, you had dropped all capabilities. Now, because you had dropped all capabilities, you don't have this capability, even though you're a root user, to basically change ownership to user 101. So want to emphasize here that running as root doesn't mean it has everything if it doesn't have those capabilities in place. But the good news is you're on baseline profile, and the baseline profile do allow you to set this chown capability. So let's go back, edit our deployment. That's on test 3, yeah. Go to capabilities, and then let's add chown. So what this does is it's going to drop all capabilities but add back chown capability, and hopefully this helps. So do a get pods. Now you see the crash loop back off. This was 79 seconds ago, 4 restarts. So this is not the one. This is the new. Yeah, so this is the new pod that's up. It still doesn't like something. So I can go back to logs on test 3 and see what's going on. Very similar error. Now you don't have the capability to bind to port 80. So even though you're a root user, if you don't have the net bind service capability that's talked about here, you cannot bind to ports that are less than 1024. So that explains why Bitnami Nginx was running on port 8080. Yeah. So I go back, edit my deployment again, and let's go back, add net bind service capability, and see if this helps. Hopefully it should. I do see container creating and I do see it running. So we did it. So this is good. So I have this container running and I can again do a quick exec into this container. I can do an ID. I see it's running as root, which was as expected. Baseline profile do allow container to run as root. I can even get into the container. So now I'm inside this container. You see that it does run as root. And you know, because this was Nginx, you know that it was running as, it was bound to port 80. So I'm going to do a quick local host with verbose. I didn't like it. I did give a space here. Okay, so it's running on port 80, but I'm not getting back a good response. So something is still bad. All right, so let me check if. Oh, I'm inside the container. Let me go back and see if the container is still running. So let me do logs on this and see if I get to see anything here. It did say, so this Nginx started, this process was running as master. There was this master process. It looks like it did start worker process because we saw the chown capability where it could create this master worker process. But it did fail here, saying that it couldn't perform a set gate on 101. So it looks like this master process created this worker process, and it tries to run this worker process, set this this group ID on that worker process to 101, but again, it doesn't have the permission to do because it doesn't have that capability set get, and you would see the same issue with set UID as well. So again, emphasizing the importance of capabilities here. So I'm going to add set git and set UID because I know that's going to fail as well, and that should hopefully make it work. Let's see, it's running all right. So I can do a kubectl exec on this. Let me go into the container as expected. I do an ID is running as root. What problem we had was running as curling, making sure it gives back a good response. Now you see you did get back a good response. So we kind of went from the restricted profile, came back to the baseline profile and show how those capabilities are really important, right? Let me do a quick PS aux on this. PS is not found. I basically wanted to show those worker process that were running in this container, but looks like the PS process is not available as part of the base Nginx image. So, but we do have an option. So I can do kubectl my debug. Let me check the help. Kubectl -m test3 debug my pod. So my pod was, what was the part that I was running as? That was this part, right? Yeah. All right. So I want to debug this part -it -copy to. So all I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to copy this part, the same part spec, into my debugger pod with an additional image, say CentOS, and I also want to make sure that I can list processes running from all the pods in the list of containers I have. So I want to basically, if I want to list all the processes, we do have this share processes equal to true. So I'm going to set share processes equal to true. So it does the magic of listing processes across all containers. So worth to look into the Linux namespaces, how you can basically make sure you can only restrict showing few processes inside the container, right? So in this case, we are trying to list processes across multiple containers in the same pod. So I can, so I'm going to debug this. I did get into, hopefully it should take me into the CentOS image. Want to make sure I'm on CentOS. I'm on CentOS, and let me do a quick PS aux here, and there you go. You see all the list of processes running in this part. So this is magic. So you do see the POS container with has a SPID 1, and these are the three things coming from my Nginx container, and this is from the CentOS image. So I can do a cat proc on everything is a file in Linux. So I know there must be a file for 7/proc. So I can do that, and I can get the status of this. It shows a big list, but all I'm interested in looking those capabilities. So I do see these capabilities here. Everything is 4C1. Let me just take the effective capability. And there's this cap sh tool where you can use quickly to decode what capabilities that your process is basically running as. And if you do that, it does show you have these now 4 capabilities here. So that's exactly those 4 capabilities that we did set on this container. So that's exactly what I wanted to talk about today. I also wanted to touch base a little about Gatekeeper, but but that means that I would need 5 more minutes, but I think I'm running out of time because I think I only had time till 7:40. So I'll leave it to you guys. But yeah, any questions, let me know.
So I think we have a question by Rana, who says, can we run any application that runs on normal CentOS and run this inside a KTS pod that is sidebar panel? Yeah. And also for the rest of the audience, you can raise your hand. We'll allow you to unmute yourself and you can ask your question directly to Srikanth. I think there are a few questions that came up in the chat section as well.
Can we run any application that runs on normal CentOS and run on KTS pod? So I don't understand it well, but yeah, you can have a CentOS image, and you if you want to run application on CentOS that you want to run inside KTS pod, I think that's possible as long as you build that image and bake in your application into it, and nothing should stop you from running that, I believe. Yeah.
So I don't see any more questions. So I guess we're at the end of our first session. Thank you so much, Srikanth. I'm really sorry that we couldn't get to the interesting bits of Gatekeeper. We'd love to listen from you again, and probably, you can take us through the capabilities of Gatekeeper and all of those things. But in the interest of time, I think we will move to the second session for today. So we have Aman and Mohit Sharma from VMware. So they both work and contribute to the release engineering activities for Tanzu Community Edition, and they will be talking to us about how you can create Tanzu clusters the open source way. Right. So over to you, Aman and Mohit.
Thanks, Prakash. Thanks, Srikanth, for amazing talk. Hello, everyone. So let me share my screen first, then we can start with the presentation. Okay. So these are topic like create Tanzu cluster the open source way. So like Tanzu cluster the open source way, there is a let's move to first bio, then we can start with like what's the open source thing in the Tanzu. So here, myself, Aman, I'm currently working as MTS intern at VMware, and I started with the open source with this Tanzu Community Edition project only. And like, yeah, I'm loving it and trying to contribute to other open source too. So over to you, Mohit.
Hey, hi guys. So myself Mohit, and I'm working with VMware from last 2.5 years. So I was been working with VMware for managing the Harbor, basically the open source OCI compliant image registry, and now I'm working with the team to for the release engineering activity of Tanzu Community Edition and the VMware Tanzu. Yeah. Next slide.
Thanks, Mohit. So here is the agenda for our talk. So like we start with the what this Tanzu Community Edition is, what are its features, and like how to get started, where you can contribute. We will cover that part too. Then we have an amazing demo. So we will let you know ahead like what that demo includes. So in that, like where you can get help regarding the Tanzu Community Edition doubts or everything if you start contributing there. So and like we will end with the Q&A session. So if you have any like question, you can ask in chat while I am like discussing. Mohit can answer, and Meanwhile, when Mohit will start, like I can answer the chat, or like in the Q&A, you can like unmute and ask questions. So yeah. Okay. So what Tanzu Community Edition is like, it's an open source project which launched last year in October. So like it's a Kubernetes platform which have like additional features where you can like test, a user can test or like run their application and avail all these features and like packages and plugins which Tanzu Community Edition comes up with. So we will discuss like what packages, what features, or what plugins it includes. So if you like have a thought like, okay, so we have some project like Tanzu Community Edition, so where we can run it, or like how can we, so we will let you know how, but like where you can like run it on a bare metal, like on a KEPD in a Docker environment. And it also supports 3 clouds like AWS, Azure, and vSphere. So we will share a doc getting started also, like how can you create the install the Tanzu Community Edition on different platforms, and how you can like install the plugins and the packages there. So let's move to the next slide where we are going to yeah. So here we are going to discuss the features and the architecture of Tanzu Community Edition. So like as I said, that Tanzu Community Edition comes up with the packages. So there is a cap controller which is managing all the packages, where like there are more than 10, 20 packages are there which a user can use in their application. If suppose if you are developing something, you need package like Grafana, Prometheus, FluentBit, Velar. So there are a number of packages which you can use inside the Tanzu Community Edition only, like by creating the cluster using the Tanzu Community Edition, and inside that you can install all these packages there and uh, use those packages features in your application. So we provide that particular development platform to you. So uh, if like Tanzu consists of like as I said, it consists of clusters, it consists of plugins like conformance diagnostic, and also it's consists of the packages. So like we will show you like what, so in the architecture you can see overview like what all packages it have, or what all platforms supports. So all there are multi more which are adding now also. So like this the earlier one, the architecture. So there are a lot of packages which are included recently. So like whenever you go to the repo, you can explore all the packages there. So yeah, this is a particular architecture like provider which it supports, the runtimes, the connectivity packages which it supports, all the services, build and deploy, observability. So like these all things are which comes with the Tanzu Community Edition. So like it yeah, so for the installation there are 2 package managers which DC supports, one in the homebrew and another one is Choco. So homebrew for the Linux and Mac, and Choco for the Windows environment. So for the Windows, Linux, and Mac, all 3 environments are supported by this Tanzu Community Edition. So yeah, so like here is a link, we will share this particular presentation with you. So you can go with the explore the repo, also the getting started guide. So like that is awesome guide. You can start with the basic, and we have like step by step how you can create a cluster, how can you install a package, how can you install a TC on various providers. So like this guide includes everything. Also there is a contribution guide like every open source project have. So you can read it, start contributing there. We are all there to support you. So now Mohit will take over and like discuss what all clusters if Tanzu Community Edition have. So yeah, over to you, Mohit.
Roman, thank you. Next slide. Yeah, so basically in the Tanzu Community Edition, we are supporting 2 different types of clusters. So in basic, we have 2 options: managed cluster and unmanaged cluster. So when it comes to unmanaged cluster, the Tanzu Community Edition doesn't manage the life cycle of cluster, where it just creates a cluster which is basically a wrapper around a kind cluster and a minikube cluster. So we have an option where we can create a cluster around kind or minikube, and we are trying to bring support for different providers as well. So for now, we haven't support for kind and Minikube. Apart from that, you can use all the features which are available in the managed cluster. In the unmanaged cluster, where you can install the packages like Grafana, Prometheus, Harbor, with the go of single command. And once you run the command, the package installing will happen automatically. You can do the cluster level diagnosis. So this unmanaged cluster is basically designed in such a way to have a look and feel of Tanzu clusters. So it's basically to give you a look and feel. It is not there for production related activities or not. So it is just for dev and POCs kind of and stuff, where you need a cluster as an ad hoc basis, or you want to spin a cluster within like 2-3 minutes. So it is like a very fast spin where you can spin the clusters. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so the other cluster type which has been supported is a Minikube cluster, managed cluster. So here you have a cluster where the cluster life cycles is also been created. So here, if you create a cluster, let's say the managed cluster, what happened behind the hood is it spins up a Docker container on the bootstrapping machine, and then it creates a managed cluster over the dedicated provider. So let's say if you want to create a cluster over AWS or Azure or a vSphere environment, or the Docker container capd. So what it does is it creates a management cluster over the provider, and then that management cluster does a management or the lifecycle management of all other workload cluster. So here, if you deploy the managed cluster, you have a cluster lifecycle where you can upgrade the clusters. You get to upgrade, you get to manage the different providers and all that stuff. So it is basically a best practice for production environment. Yep. And yeah, you can create a local cluster like Docker-based cluster even in the managed or unmanaged, both the clusters. Yeah. So I think Aman will start a recording, which we have already recorded. Yeah, Aman, please. Aman, before that, please make sure you share your computer audio also. So.
Sure. So just a sec, is it audible?
No.
No. Can you please help me with where I can like share this audio?
I can do it from my end. Let me share my screen.
Sure, thanks.
Okay. I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible now.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, let's start. So, these are the prerequisite for installing the unmanaged cluster, or assuming it as a managed cluster also. These are the basic prerequisite what you needed for installing any of the Tanzu Kubernetes environment, irrespective of community edition or the TKG. So you have to install the Tanzu CLI, that is community editions CLI. Then let's go to the Tanzu unmanaged cluster, since we'll be talking on Tanzu unmanaged clusters for today's talk. So let's say TCE BLR Kubernetes. So this is the cluster name what we want to create as an unmanaged cluster. So let's hit enter. So for this, I have pre-warmed the infrastructure in the AWS. So where I've already installed the Docker CLI, Docker engine, basically kubectl and the Tanzu CLI. So just to keep the demo short, I've already pre-installed the prerequisite. So what happened behind the hood is that Tanzu, basically the unmanaged cluster, creates an kind cluster behind the hood, which is having the VMware flavor of kind cluster. So yeah, once it is installed, we'll we'll see all the different pods, what it creates and all, what they are about. So it takes around roughly 5 to 7 minutes depending on the network speed and bandwidth. So yeah, now you can see the cluster has already been created. This is the location of the kube config. Okay, looks good. Now, if you see, the cluster has already been created, kubectl get. If you see, this is already having a cluster. It might take a minute or so to get the node into the ready state. So by that time it gets into ready state, we can check on the other available commands. So let's say that you want to see the packages which are available for the clusters, which are basically bundled with the community edition. So if you run this command, you'll see all the different types of packages which are available and which can be installed with the help of Tanzu CLI as in one click or one command. So yep, this is it. Now if you want to see the list of clusters, so yeah, one good thing about this is you can install like the multiple unmanaged cluster depending on the use cases and all. So that's all. You can also see the number of pods, what all pods are running. So if you run this, you will see that there are mostly the basic Kubernetes pod, kube scheduler, API server, and everything basically with respect to the Kubernetes. And by default, we bundle the Calico as in CNI provider. Apart from that, we have an option to support Antria as well, which is again an open source networking CNI. So apart from this, we installed two different namespace. We basically create two different namespace: local path storage for storage, since this is in local cluster. And apart from that, we create another namespace known as TKG system, where we install the KApp controller. So KApp controller is basically the component which has been responsible for all the package management and the cluster lifecycle, managing the packages and all that stuff. So yep. Now we'll basically just install the package, which is FluentBit. So I've already listed this markdown where all the commands are there. You can anyway always come over here and just put like -help, and you'll get to see all the commands. So based on what plugin or packages you are using, the help differs. So feel free to use it out across the creation process and everything. Okay, so now we'll just use the install command for FluentBit. Okay, just a quick check I'll do is I'll just check the FluentBit version, FluentBit Community Edition 175, just to make sure it's the same version which has been available. And yep, it's like pretty much straightforward. It has done all the bootstrapping and all. Yeah, so now if I go and check the pods, it would have already been installed the FluentBit pod in the namespace and created the FluentBit namespace also. So similarly, with the available packages from the list over here, you can install Contour or Gatekeeper, Grafana, Harbor, Flux CD, Flux and Kpack and whatnot. So feel free to explore that according to your need. Yeah, once you are done, you can similar to the creation command, just pass the delete command and feel free to delete the cluster. once you're done with that, so yeah, that's almost of it. Okay, so similar to the package installation, we can delete the packages also, like on ad hoc basis. So the only thing what you have to do is this command package installed and delete and the package name. So I'll just do, before that I'll just do a installed get. Okay, sorry, my bad. So this is a help command which you get to see. So I'll do a list. So you can already see that the Fluent bit is installed. So delete and just the name. Okay, just a confirmation. And yeah, it will delete this package in a minute or so. It will clean up everything. And similar to the package, we already have seen that the unmanaged cluster list command, basically ls or list. So now we'll be deleting the cluster also. So we have already documented it over here. Tanjo unmanaged cluster delete and cluster name. So I'll just run the command with the cluster name, and yep, it's trying to delete the cluster. And yeah, it's pretty much fairly fast. So feel free to explore it. And it's not just that, if you have noticed, it just created a single node in the cluster, if you have noticed over here. So we have a particular flags where we can pass the number of nodes if you want to make it a scalable environment where you have multiple nodes and all. So we do have an option to pass that as in flag. So just in case if you want to take an help of it, just do create -help, and yeah, you'll see all different parameters which are available. So you can pass the worker node count, control plane node count, if you want to use different CNI. So as of now, Calico and Entry are supported, so you can pass it with the flag, just in case if you want to use Entry. And yeah, you can while creating cluster also, you have an option to install package. So it's just that you don't need to run another command. Other than that, you have fairly multiple options to provide port sider and things over there. So yeah, port sider and service sider. So, that's pretty much it on unmanaged cluster. Yep.
Okay, so I can cover up. I think there are some questions in the chat, so I'll cover it up in a minute. So yeah, the ways to reach out community. So if you see, we have an Slack channel over the public Slack, and apart from that, if you feel like there is something issue, or if you need some help around some particular cluster setup or something, we can reach out via GitHub issues. We do have a community meeting every first and third Wednesday of every month, and you can reach out to us via the social media handle over the Twitter. Yeah. Okay. I think there are some questions. I think it's from Humble. Yeah, so we do run on unstable releases of Kubernetes. So as of the current release, we are running on 120, 121, and 122. Different flavor based on the different flavors or different versions of community edition. So yeah, we do have an options around different versions of Kubernetes. Yes, you can, Avinash. Yes, you can create a production ready cluster. So our suggestion would be go for a managed cluster over the cloud providers like AWS or Azure, or if you are having a vSphere environment, you can shoot it over there also. So you can create a clusters. There are few folks who are already running a production ready clusters, and we have a different way, like you have a lot of parameters to configure when we are creating clusters for managed clusters. So there are a lot of parameters, I would say. If I can show you quickly as well. Sure, let me share my screen. Pardon me, I'm using the command line aliases. So there are some aliases of managed cluster. So if you see over here, you have an create an all option. So yeah, here you get a beautiful UI also for the managed cluster, where you can put in your configuration on the UI, and you can select the parameters over there, and based on the parameters, it can spin up the clusters. It will do all the bootstrapping in the backend, and it will spin up the clusters on particular cloud provider accordingly. And you do have an option of passing a configuration file if you're doing it repeatedly. So it's not a good idea to do it via UI if you're doing it repeatedly. Does it support bare metal K8s installation? Sorry, we are not supporting bare metal installation. We do support on vSphere, so it's not on the bare metal hardware. Any other questions? Okay, that was pretty much from us. Feel free to reach out via any channel. We'll be here, happy to help you.
I think there's
Sorry,
one
Rahul.
last question that has just come.
Yeah, I can take it up. Okay, how's gonna set up a load balancer? So you can basically we have an support for Contour, which works as an load balancer. It's an open source project. Again, it's a Contour open source project, and we do have a support of external DNS for as a package manager. In case if you want to use Nginx as an load balancer, so you can use even Nginx. And we do support over the different cloud provider, like the native ingress provider and all. Does this answer you, Avinash? Okay.
Awesome. So that brings us to the end of the meetup. Thank you so much, Mohit and Aman, for spending this time with us and taking us through Tanzu Community Edition. So just a few more things before we, before we disconnect, and I'll give you your weekend back in like 5 minutes. But we have some more announcements to make. So we'll be posting the links to the video, the recorded video, the YouTube video on our Twitter. So make sure to follow us there. We'll also be posting the links to the presentations itself if you want to take a look at that. You can also join us for the conversation. You can also join us on slack.k8s.io. Most of us hang around there in the India specific channels, which are in events and in users. Right. So if you have any questions or if you want to interact with any of us, you can find us there. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear from you, especially because we're this is the first meetup after a while. So we would love to hear from you on how can we do things better. If there's something that you thought could have been done better, or if there's suggestions that you have, please make sure to drop them in the chat section, right? Follow us on Twitter. K8SBLR is our Twitter handle. Do make sure to follow us there. We post all the new updates over there. So if you want to keep up with what we are doing, you can follow us on Twitter. You can also submit talks to us for the next the upcoming meetups. So if you want to talk in one of the upcoming meetups, do get in touch with us. Let us know. right, and we can make it happen. Once we share the video on YouTube, do make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share it with people that who you think will benefit from the video. So yeah, that was pretty much what I had to say. Suraj, Humble, do you want to add something?
Nope. Thanks.
Yeah, it's pretty much you covered everything.
Thanks, everyone. So I'll give you your weekend back. Go have a fun weekend.